I am Dr. Cindy Dupuy. I have a PhD in learning disabilities. I do assessment, intervention, and advocacy. I'm also an adult with dyslexia and dysgraphia.
My name is Kim Sharman. I'm a reading and writing remediation specialist, working with kids kindergarten through college, and I work with all sorts of learning challenges.
For a very long time.
Hmm.
And you can't do the calculation in your head anymore of how long you've been doing it.
No, forget it.
All right, so we're going to talk about the Visual Spatial Processing Index score, which is made up of two subtests. Okay. First one is block design, and the second one is visual puzzles. Which do you want to do first?
Block design's easiest.
Okay, so we have a great game that illustrates this. I don't know if you have it handy, Kim. Do you have your qubits game nearby?
I do.
You want to go grab it really quickly? So in block design, I give you a target shape, and then I give you red and white blocks, and you have to use the red and white blocks to build the target shape. And I'm talking really slowly in an attempt to let you get back. Are you having a hard time finding this, Kim?
I am.
Are you having a hard time remembering where you put this item in space?
Yes. Is that one? I can't find. And plus, when I get nervous, then I really forget.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
All right, if you can't find it, come back and we'll do without.
Okay.
Cracking me up.
I need to, that's why I spend so much time preparing for my lessons. Because when I get flustered, then it really goes. Yeah.
That would be the ADHD in you.
Yeah.
ADHD. All right, so we have these geometric designs and we have these red and white blocks. So they're solid on one side. They're solid one color on one side, on two sides, solid on two colors, the other color on the other side, and then they're half color on two sides.
There's triangles, there's
Solid squares.
white, there's all color.
Yeah.
You have to create.
And again, we've got a video where we talk about the individual subtests and we give you an idea of what it looks like. Okay, so what does it take to do well on block design? Or what does it take to do poorly on block design? Oh, ye who hated block design.
But now I can do it. But well, first of all, part to whole, right? So you show me a whole design, and I have to conceive, like, how do I make these little blocks with all different angles of color on them uh, become this entire large design.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I don't know what else. It's part to whole, and yeah, I don't know how stuff goes together sometimes.
I happen to have found a quick picture of qubits, so let me pull this up really quickly.
Yeah, this is a great
Everybody.
game.
Give me 2 seconds here. I'm almost there.
Sorry, I wish I had it
That's okay. We didn't give you full
somewhere.
warning. That was bad of me. Uh, so this is a great game because it lets kids work on the skill set. And it's not directly exactly the same as block design, but it gives you the idea. So notice here that you've got this card in the center, and then you've got these cubes, and this actually has 6 different faces, and you have to try and build the shapes. Now, what's a common thing that we do for kids when they're doing qubits, because there's 16 cubes? You
what
match.
we what Cindy has taught me to do, it's like when you have trouble visualizing perhaps a corner of one of those squares you see on the screen, like, what is the individual part? What does it look like? If you put a piece of white paper to try to outline the square, then you go, oh, I get it. It's the one with the dark black triangle in the upper right hand corner, and the
Yeah,
lower left hand corner is a white triangle.
yeah.
So it
And so
helps
that, go ahead.
it just helps your eye to you start to see things differently. Now I see things differently when she would give me that, because I have the skill to break a hole into pieces now.
Yeah, and so when you actually do it on the test, kids initially they have lines so kids can figure out where the squares are, where the cubes are, and then the lines disappear, and a lot of them are like, this just got harder. And so you still have to be able to mentally parse it and
Mhm.
figure out how the cubes go in what direction. I will frequently, it cracks me up, I will see kids flip to the other side of the triangle shapes, which are half and half, and then put it down exactly the same way. Like they're not thinking about, like they know the cube is not in the right orientation, but they don't know how to reorient the cube to get it in
Oh, is
correct.
that working memory also to remember that you've already tried that before or
A
no?
little bit, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
But to have to be able to mentally parse and cut it and figure out how you're going to construct those elements. And then at the end, they actually get rid of the sidelines. So you don't know the actual shape of it. And you again have to mentally figure out how you're going to parse it.
yeah.
Okay. So what would cause your score to be low on that?
Um, well, visual spatial integration, right?
Visual spatial processing.
Processing?
Visual
Oh,
motor
but
integration is something else, but visual spatial processing.
oh, okay, so visual spatial processing.
How do I think
Um,
about things in space? How do things fit in space? Can
uh-huh.
I visualize how to put things in a space?
Is this also the ability to see reflections in the reflections in the mirror and three-dimensional moving things are like no, not
Yeah.
three-dimensional as much? Yeah.
So kids that are really good at this, like I can pack anything into a tiny space. Like everybody is always amazed at how much stuff I can get in a sea kayak.
Hmm.
Like I can stuff more gear and actually get the guy I paddle with lectures me of just because you can fit it in, you shouldn't
Doesn't
carry.
mean you should. Whereas for me, I have to do a lot of complex packing, but it takes me I spend days in advance.
I would be packing your kayak to get there and back both times.
Yeah, I take a lot of time to
Yeah.
figure this stuff out.
Um, so also kids won't notice little details, so they won't notice if a block is rotated and they've made an error. So attention, I feel like we've said this with just about every subtest on just about every index, attention plays a really important role. So if you're not looking for those little details and double checking to make sure that what you've produced looks like the target, you can get 0 credit because one block is turned 90 degrees.
We have a great game on the iPad for that, right? The teacup.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is that game? What is it called?
Sim
Visual
shuffle.
Sim Shuffle?
Shuffle. Yeah.
Very good.
So, so some kids can't mentally parse, some kids won't notice the details, some kids can't figure out how it goes in 3 dimensions. I have kids build all sorts of weird shapes. So it will be like in a diamond shape and they'll build it square in another way. Like they
Huh,
can't mentally do the manipulation in space. Okay.
huh.
Now, there's another thing that plays a role in block design, the infamous stopwatch.
Oh, yeah. Horrible.
So you get bonus points for speed. So if you solve it very quickly, you get a lot of points. If you're 1 second over the maximum allowed time, you get 0 points on the item.
So these kids could be engineers, they could be doctors who operate and have to see things from all different perspectives and visualize that.
Yes. One of my clients was a physician. He was a surgeon. He did a very specific kind of surgery on abnormal structures, and he could visualize what was happening in the body as he was manipulating structures to try and get them as close to normal functioning as possible, and didn't feel compelled by the bounds of making it look exactly the same. It was how do I make it function as normal as possible?
Of course, also architecture too, right? All these things.
Interior design,
Mhm.
art,
Functionality. Mhm.
sculpture,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Lots of fields that this has direct application to.
Is this
Okay.
right brain stuff?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. This is one of my strengths. So my background, my bachelor's degree is in chemistry, and I loved organic chemistry because it was how do I see how bonds and how molecules will be structured relative to bonds and everything else, and how everything fits in space. Loved it. Loved
Physics
it.
too, right? Physics too, or not really?
Yeah, yeah. The math and physics drove me a little nuts because calculus was not my friend because my brain wasn't in the right developmental stage when it was forced on me. but if I went back and did physics now, I'd probably be much better. So,
Okay, interesting.
okay. So now let's talk about visual puzzles.
I
So
don't.
on this one, they give you a geometric figure and they give you 6 puzzle options, and you have to mentally pick 3 of the 6 to go together to look like the target, and they don't overlap. So they have to fit next to each other.
Mm.
And once again, there's a time limit.
Mm.
If you go 1 second over, you get 0 credit.
Wait, can I ask you why is there a time limit? Because the time limit ensures that the skill is really measured correctly? Mm.
Test publishers are trying to make sure that the test doesn't take 2 hours.
Oh, okay.
And if it's untimed, so for example, the Stanford Binet for all but one subtest has a time limit on it. And it has taken me up to 5 hours for some kids that if you're making adequate progress, there's not a time limit.
Interesting. Okay.
And the WISC is intentionally designed to be able to administer in a relatively short period of time.
Mm.
And so that's one of the ways that they limit how long it takes to administer the test. That's also the reason they went from 10 subtests to 7 subtests.
Did they find that increasing the length of time could create errors in other parts of the testing, or is it just a efficiency?
I do not know the inner workings of why they made those decisions,
Mm.
but when they advertised it, their statement was, we've made it faster to administer.
Mm.
And when people try and administer it quickly, I find that you don't always get a score that is reflective of the individual's true ability. And
Mm.
I understand the concerns because school psychologists are working with a very heavy load of students and they've got to work quickly. But that can often come at the cost of a student having an accurate assessment of their ability.
Mm.
I find all sorts of errors, but we'll do that another time. They're doing it with the best of intention. I understand why they're doing it. I
You have to
think
be aware.
that school districts should hire more people.
But again, this is a sniffer comment that you can say, wait, I feel like my kid is really good at this. Why did he score so poorly?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So on the visual puzzles, where in block design you have it and you mentally parse it, in visual puzzles, you see the part and you make it whole.
Mm.
Okay. So in block design, you've got to figure out how to cut it up. And in visual puzzles, you've got to figure out how to put it back together. There's a
Mm.
little crossover in both, but there's a lot of correlation in that.
Mhm.
And so I will see kids, what's the common error? Not paying attention to
What?
details.
Oh, details. Yeah.
Kids will make mistakes
Mm.
and they won't catch and correct them. But I also have kids that can instantly see them, mentally throw them all together. They can do that mental gymnastics in their brain, throw it together and yield the final outcome with very little difficulty.
And sometimes they compare the two next to each other and it's not the same. And it's the same to them. It looks the same. They don't see it.
Yeah. So kids that are good at this, again, it's still that engineering, art, spatial component. A lot of people say this is the Lego skill, and I take a little bit of issue with that because Legos have instruction manuals and they say this is how you build it, right? Or if kids tend to deviate from what the manual says of this is how you build it, they will do kind of trial and error to get the final construct. Okay. So it's not completely a Lego thing. I don't want to imply that every kid that does this is going to love Legos or that you'll be amazing at Legos or that you have kids that are amazing at Legos and then not good at this. So there's not necessarily a one-to-one correlation because the situation isn't the same. But kids that are good at this like to put things together, like to see things, how things go together in space. I also think of it as the IKEA builders. Like you give them the IKEA directions, which you hate and I love. I can whip out IKEA stuff. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. That in a fantasy world, I would sit and build things all day like that. But there are a lot of people out there that can't do that. They look at the picture and they're like, how does that relate to this? And they just can't see how it goes together.
But like, this has nothing to do with, like, I can take a complex thing that I'm reading and I can take the parts, all the parts together and put it together as a whole. But that is not the same concept as this. This is really shapes. It's
Right,
not words. It's not sentence structure, right?
right. Now,
It's
some
really
people will try and verbalize to get there, like, oh, there's a corner here and it looks like this, or this triangle is this angle, or whatever. So you can
okay.
turn a visual task into a verbal task, or a verbal task into a visual task, which is a whole nother video. But um, there is, this is a particular subset of skill, and these kids are good at lots of different things. And if you have this difficulty, these are the kids that go to the grocery store and they can't figure out how much can fit in their cart or how much to buy. And when they go to cook, they have to use measuring for everything and they don't recognize the differences.
I thought that was dyscalculia or something.
Well, if you have visual spatial deficits, you can also have dyscalculia, which is difficulty with math. How do I conceptualize math? How do I understand number? All of those kinds of things. So these are correlated.
Hmm.
Okay. So these are the kids that can't pack their own suitcase, as you mentioned. How do I put it all in there? These are kids who can't visualize the steps in a process to complete something.
So that's the academic impact.
Yeah. You know, when teachers think that they're doing all kids a favor by having them design a diorama, there are kids out there that would love to write a book report instead of building a diorama because they can't figure out how to build the diorama. These are
So,
also the kids that often can't visualize the picture in their head.
mm, hmm.
So they read a story and they have no mental image of what's happening where. Does that make sense?
But reading a story, and there's nothing in front of you except the only thing you've got is your ability to see
Imagination.
pictures in your head. Oh, you're right.
And there's some kids that can't do that.
But what if I can do that, but I can't do the other stuff? Like the
It's not
chemistry.
a one-to-one. It's not like if you can do one, you automatically can do the other.
So you could be
It's
good
a
at visual.
visual memory piece that can't do the mental manipulation of it.
So you can be good at parts of this and not good at other parts. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
I thought it was
All
one or the
brains are
other.
not the same. Each one is individual and each one is different.
So this is why it's so important to learn about yourself in this way, because you learn what your deficits are, but you also learn what your gifts are. And that's what people don't realize when they be tested. It's not to find out bad news, it's to find out, what am I really good at? What do I need to work on?
Well, some people it is, why is a kid struggling in class?
Right.
If you don't get the IQ score right, then how do you know the struggle is there?
But kids need to understand, yeah, I have a deficit here, but I'm really great at this. So, I mean, people
When I
need
do my kid debriefs, I spend the majority of the time talking about here's what your strengths are.
strength.
Here's where you're
Yeah.
really amazing.
Yeah.
And then we
Yeah.
spend the rest of the time saying, here are a couple things we got to work on. So here's all the gifts. Here are the things we got to work on. But look at all these gifts.
And if you read your Malcolm Gladwell book, what is it, Goliath or something? Or is that the one?
David and Goliath. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the book that talks about
Yep.
these famous people, Rockefeller, blah, 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 whoever, who developed other skill sets or relied on them to compensate. Yeah.
Walking case study in that, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
All right. Questions, comments, please let us know and look forward to our next video.
Bye bye.